Welcome to Badass Women with Bonnie Marcus, and my name is Karen Hale, and we are doing a very special badass presentation today. Um, I get the chance to ask Bonnie some questions. So, first of all, welcome, Bonnie. How are you today?
I'm doing well. I'm having a good day.
Well, every day should be a good day. At least we should find something good in each day, right?
Sometimes it's a stretch, but yes, I agree.
Well, you are right. And for those of you who are listening, we do our best to have good days every day. But I have a couple questions for you now that you're bringing Badass Women to New Cleveland Radio.
I know. I'm so excited, Karen.
So are we, because, I've been following you for a while. And yesterday I spent most of the day going back and listening to a number of the podcasts you've done previously. And in every podcast, I found something about myself. So,
That's great.
as I started wondering if I had many personalities. Uh,
Many aspects of your personality. But because you do this for a living full time,
right.
that we record these things and we kind of put them out into the cyberspace. And it's not very often that we get feedback back about oh, that resonated with me, or that really inspired me. And really the purpose of the show is to feature amazing women who share their badass stories about how they got to where they are. um, and so I'm hoping that listeners like yourself and others out there will find that there is something that they can grab a hold of and feel motivated.
Well, I will tell you, many of your guests that you've had in the past are very motivating. Um, and I want them to know that. So hopefully they will listen to this and know that they certainly are appreciated. So I'm going to start asking you a question. And my big question was, are you a badass?
That's such a great question because before I started this show, I never would have thought I was. Uh, I'm not somebody anybody who knows me who said, oh, Bonnie, she's a badass. Because I think we go by this definition of a badass being somebody who's in your face, kind of brash, and take me the way I am, and really kind of bold and audacious. And so I knew that that wasn't really the way people perceive me, or even the way I think of myself. But then I came across a definition by Katie Couric. And Katie's definition is a badass woman is somebody who challenges the status quo, the hierarchy, the patriarchy, who shows up with confidence in herself. I'm not quoting word for
Right.
word, but it was something like that. And I it so resonated with me that that's a definition that I can really relate to and think of myself that way. Because if I look at my own life and career, I've had many badass moments for sure, where I've taken a leap, where I've refused to play small, where I've showed up confident, etc. But I'm telling you, until I did this show, I never said, "You're a badass, Bonnie." Uh, it feels good, Karen, to kind of own it.
Yeah.
I mean, it just feels powerful somehow. I don't know. Do you think you are a badass?
You know, I never thought of myself that way until I started listening to the different podcasts that you already have out there. And that's why I'm even more excited that we're bringing it over to New Cleveland Radio, because I believe there's a badass in each of us. Sometimes we're afraid to bring it out because we don't know what other people are going to think about us. Um, And maybe we were brought up in such a way that we're supposed to be prim and proper all the time. I'm not, okay? But I've been in situations where I've, you know, sealed my lips. My heart went heavy because I wasn't being true to myself.
Yeah.
But I now believe that I am true to myself. And I feel better. I'm not hurting anybody, but I'm saying this is me. This is what I believe in.
Yeah. And I sincerely hope that the stories that women tell and share about their personal journeys will inspire women to say, you know what? I am a badass. I've done this, I've done that. I think that our own stories can be very powerful if we own them.
It's owning them and also allowing ourselves to tell them.
Yeah.
That's a big thing. So, um, yeah, you are a badass. It's pretty good out there. Um, where do you get your stories from? Every week you put together a podcast. You find all these interesting individuals out there. I'm sure you don't go knocking on doors. So, how do you bring these stories to us?
Well, it's interesting. In some cases, I do reach out because I know that somebody has a really badass story. In many cases, women do reach out to me because they're eager to kind of to really tell their story and share that with other women and other listeners. It's kind of a combination. I think because I write for Forbes, I have a column on Forbes. I get a lot of media pitches. And sometimes these pitches will then turn into the potential for a guest rather than an article, or maybe it's even both. As the podcast becomes more well known, there are more women who want to step up, I think, and share their story.
I think so. So, I know this wasn't a question you were expecting, but I'm going to ask it anyways. This past week at the Democratic National Convention, a lot of women spoke, and some of them we thought of in the past, not in a nice way of being a badass, but how did you feel about them coming forth now in with their voices?
Well, it's long overdue. And you know, society has to catch up with us because we look in a negative light on powerful, badass women, ambitious women. There's been a lot of talk in the media now. Oh, she's too ambitious. And for years, I've been saying, no, you need to own that ambition. You need to own your talent and your personal and professional power. Uh, so in some ways, society still needs to catch up. But it's a chicken and an egg thing. I think if we're going to hang around and wait for society to say it's okay to step up and speak up, uh, it may never happen. And usually change happens when somebody is willing to take a bold step forward. Uh, and it doesn't need to be, even a baby step is
Right.
something that moves in the right direction. Uh, but I applaud the women who spoke at the convention, and many of them were really terrific and had heartfelt things to say. And I think when you're that authentic and you're that passionate, you can't help but come across as a bit of a badass.
Yep. Well, and that was one of the things I saw, that it was all authentic. Okay. It wasn't preconceived that, I'm running for an office and I'm the best. It was, this is about us. This is what we need to do. And I felt comforted. I felt like they were all putting this wonderful blanket around me and saying the words that I was feeling. So I was pretty darn impressed. So a lot of badass women out there, and it's not a bad term.
And we need to inspire more of them to own that.
Well, and I think our traditions are changing in our society. Again, I think about how I was brought up, and I was brought up, you'll be happy if your significant other is happy. And it's like,
Or
well,
your job is to make them happy.
exactly. Um, and I lived my life like that for a very long time until my significant other, my husband, looked at me and said, "You don't have to make me happy. In fact, I'll be happy when you're happy." And I
Nice.
was like, then I don't have to work at this anymore, or not work in the same way. And I can have my voice. I can do what I need to do for me.
Can
So
we clone him?
I would love to, but there are sometimes I'd like to just send them away too. So,
Separate discussion.
yeah. Um, what was your main reason for doing the podcast?
Main reason was to showcase women who have the courage to stand up for themselves and their convictions and uh, really make some changes, have some impact in the world. And beyond the celebrities, many of the women I interview are not famous, but they're everyday women who are out there doing some pretty courageous things, who have overcome some incredible obstacles. I was thinking the other day about whether there was a pattern or some commonality in the stories that I've heard. And many of these women came from abusive childhood. Uh, and when I think about that, I like what it took to escape those kinds of environments and be bold and learn how to be authentic and proud of who you are is pretty remarkable. A woman who was brought up in a cult and escaped the cult to
Wow.
become, an incredible global leader in coaching, and what that takes to that kind of courage. But it doesn't even have to be that way, Karen, because it doesn't have to be any monumental thing that, I escaped a cult, or I was able to leave home when I was 16, or because we all have our moments of courage and recognition in what we bring, what value we bring. And so I just felt that these stories inspire us to see that in ourselves, to own that in ourselves, and to perhaps just be a little bit more of a badass every day.
Well, you use the word authentic self. And I don't know about you, but I didn't even know I had an authentic self until about 10, 15 years ago. I had used it over the years, but I didn't recognize it until one day I just like looked in the mirror and said, "Who are you? Where are you going? What do you want to do with your life?" And it was like this aha moment. Well, you've done all these other things. Now talk about it, do it, and take it to the next step. So I think you're right. You don't have to be somebody who's escaped a cult or escaped any kind of abuse. It's about waking up, looking in the mirror, and knowing who you are. And I think women are allowing each other to do that today.
I mean, our biggest trap, one of our biggest traps for sure, is we're such pleasers. And we put everybody else first. And therefore we make ourselves smaller. We take the back seat. And it's a real issue for women. I don't know if it's in our DNA, whether we were brought up that way, because, women in our generation, I would say for sure. But then I talked to many, many younger women in their 20s, who the same thing.
Wow.
And they probably don't get the same messages you and I got growing up. So I don't know where it comes from, but when your emphasis is on pleasing everybody else, how do you know who your authentic self is?
Exactly.
Because your identity is how good am I in other people's eyes? And do I measure up?
And it starts
instead of doing the inner work.
Yeah. I mean, I know growing up in a Jewish home, my brothers were the stars, and I was supposed to be this, quiet little girl who, sat with her hands on her lap and her legs, crossed. And for a long time, that's all I thought my worth was, my mother to dress me up and take me out and say, look how polite my daughter is. And yet my brothers could get involved in activities. And it was like, I don't want to sit here. And when I did come out of this shell, like I said, about 15 years ago, my whole family looked at me differently. I now became an adult. And it was like interesting.
That's interesting because I have an older brother, but I was the badass, precocious kid. And he was much more quiet. I was the one who was out there taking my ballet shoes everywhere and dancing in front of everyone, really kind of obnoxious when I think back on it. But I was out there. I was, definitely not afraid of putting myself out there. I think when I hit middle school and high school and I was interested in boys, that all of a sudden there was a shift, perhaps, to try to please others. And how am I, how do people see me? And am I pretty? And, and that kind of thing. But I think the bottom line is, in some way, shape, or form, this is something that women have to overcome. Absolutely. And if this show can help women do that, I'd be really, really happy. If I hear from one person say, you know what, Bonnie, I listened to that story and I'm just gonna, I'm just gonna take the bull by the horns and do what I need to do. Life is short.
So the podcasts are really related to your book, correct? That's going to be coming out?
Yes and no. Okay. My first book was the politics of promotion, how high achieving women get ahead and stay ahead. So that's a roadmap for women to navigate the workplace and position themselves for success. Own your ambition. Speak up. Learn how to build relationships of influence. Learn how to show up as a leader and advance your career. So, though I didn't think of it at the time, that was pretty badass, right?
Right.
Because you have to acknowledge that, yeah, you want this. You want to move your career forward. And if you do that, you can follow the process in the book and you can get there. This next book, which is not done yet, the book is done, but the title is Not Done Yet, how women over 50 regain their confidence and claim their workplace power, is really about a certain demographic, about women approaching 50 and beyond, and claiming their workplace power, their talent, and how to do that in a world that worships youth and beauty. how to do that when you're constantly marginalized and dismissed because maybe you're showing your age and therefore you're not viewed as valuable or as competent. Um, so the book really talks about how to be your badass self at this age and stay marketable and keep your job.
Well, and we know that's a very important subject right now. I was reading something earlier today about Joe Biden being 77 years old and not looking 77, not acting 77, and being a vibrant, youthful gentleman. And I thought, so who cares what his age is? Let's go back to those things, okay? That he's got this energy and he's capable and he's able. But
But this is what we do. We put people in categories, whether it's gender, sexual orientation, age, race, religion, and then we make assumptions about them rather than really getting to know them.
exactly.
And those assumptions really drive the way we behave and interact on personal levels in our personal life. And they also drive workplace practices, how companies treat the different demographics in their workplace, their hiring, firing policies, their promotion policies, their compensation. So these are the assumptions that uh, I believe we need to challenge. I mean, certainly not just around ageism, though I talk about gendered ageism,
Sure.
but all these assumptions because they keep us in a bubble and we don't really know then how to relate to other people who are different from us and we don't benefit from those differences and experiences.
Well, I think it's going to be exciting as the weeks go on, um, doing Badass Women with you. Um, I can't wait for the next guest or two that you have on so that I can move forward in my listening pleasure. And I'm hoping that our listeners, will share back with you, you know, how important these conversations are. Um, I was in the process of taking notes when I was listening yesterday because, like I said, there was something in every story that I could relate to. And it's like, this is important because I now can look in the mirror and see even a better badass person than I was before
I
that.
think it gives us the courage.
Yes, it does.
If these women are willing to share how they have overcome certain things and have learned to step up, then we can do it too. Anybody can do it. You have to want to do it.
Well, continue to bring the podcast out weekly. We are excited about it. And you're going to be on many different platforms. I know that you're on Apple right now. We'll continue on Apple, but we'll also be on YouTube and your listening pleasure of whoever you use to stream. Believe me, they're going to find your badass women out there. So, thanks.
That's great.
And we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Karen.
Thanks. Bye bye now.